Welcome to the final week of the regular season for Overwatch League, season number 3. It's been a journey, guys, from homesteads to the break to online. It has been a pretty wild ride. I've enjoyed the season. I hope you guys have as well. There are, a lot more videos coming out after this, so don't worry if you're worried about that. Be doing a couple of things going into the playoffs, talking about where teams are at, possible meta predictions, things like that, because we have the hero bans this week once again, and it is the final hero bans of the season. Once we go into playoffs, the newest changes will go live to the OWL servers, and no more hero pools at all. So, gonna be great. We get our last chance this week to have teams move up and down in the standings. Finalize where they're sitting. Expecting a lot of good games as per usual. We got our 2 on Friday, and then we got some Saturday, a lot of Saturday, and then some Sunday matchups as well. So, without further ado, we're going to get right on into it. So, Vancouver Titans taking on Boston Uprising. Vancouver coming off a nice upset victory against the Atlanta Reign, getting them to 5-14 on the season. Boston, still sitting at that 2-win spot. So I got Vancouver here. I thought that they looked really solid running the Dalton on Sombra and Shockwave on Ashe. Boston hasn't really shown too much of Sombra. So if that is what we see, I think that Vancouver is going to have a bit of an advantage. Shockwave has had really, really good performances against the lower tier teams. He's absolutely carried at times. Had a great matchup against Atlanta, even though they have some great DPS players such as Edison and Erster. So I got Vancouver in this one. I think that they win relatively easily. I don't see Boston driving them to a map 5 or anything like that. I do think that they will take one map, but that is it going into playoffs. So got Vancouver in the end 3-1. Next, we have a great matchup between LA Gladiators and Florida Mayhem. This is a rematch of a couple weeks before the Countdown Cup. These teams matched up. Gladiators took map 1, then Florida was able to come back and take maps 2, 3, and 4 for a 3-1 victory. I envision something pretty similar. I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to take the Gladiators. I think that they, Space in an interview was talking about how they thought that they were the better team in that matchup, and they kind of threw a couple of things away. I think that they've been doing better with that for sure. They've been a little bit more clean. I think that their backline and tank synergy is the most important thing, because when Gladiators struggle, it is that backline going down first, or it's OG going down really early. But I think that they've ironed pretty much all of that out. At this point, it's gonna be interesting to see Florida here. Still no Tracer in the hero pool, so I don't think that the Gladiators support line is going to be under too much pressure. So Birdring's been playing out of his mind. This is still a very close matchup. I think it could go either way, but the Gladiators have been a lot better on control maps than any other type. It's their best map by far. So I think that they find a way to get this one to 5, and then the Gladiators pull it home 3-2. Another really good matchup in the APAC region. You got Hanjo Spark taking on the Seoul Dynasty. Dynasty coming off a couple of straight wins. I think that Seoul's going to win here. I think they beat Spark and avenge their Countdown Cup loss. I think that they take it 3-1. I really like the tempo that they're playing with recently. I think that their DPS line in particular has really solidified a bit. I think Fitz has been really solid, and then of course you have Prophet. Gesture and Marvel have done a nice job, kind of rotating out of that main tank spot. And then Toyo's been a good pickup as well. He's been really solid on that Diva. Had some nice performances on the Zarya right away as well. And then the Sigma looks pretty solid. So I think we get a really competitive match here. I just like Seoul here though. I think that they're really. The main thing that we had talked about was consistency in the regular season. This is leading into playoffs. I think they're getting into that playoff mindset. Really nice underrated backline and Badoshin and Toby. They just come in and they do what they have to every week. So Spark's been a bit more up and down recently. So I got Seoul getting their revenge in a entertaining matchup here. Then you got London Spitfire taking on New York Excel. London in a little bit of a tailspin. I think New York takes this one pretty easily. Things to watch out for New York. They have brought back Hoppa a bit in terms of their off tank. We'll see what they if they try to finalize something here. Same thing with the DPS rotation. Haven't seen much Sabiolbi at all. Still no Tracer in the hero pool, so probably won't see him now. We're mostly seeing combinations of like Nene and Haxall or Nene Libero, a little bit of Libero Haxall if needed. But again, it's the same thing with New York. Like, can we lock in this lineup? Can they be really confident about each strategy? On all the different maps, because they have all the talent in the world. They're definitely the better team in this matchup. I think that they take it 3-1. Have maybe a little bit of troubles here and there because they've had some things that are just a little bit off. I think that they need to clean up the alt usage in particular a little bit. But New York, they will be competing for one of those spots coming out of the APAC region in the playoffs. Then you got the Washington Justice taking on the San Fran Shock. Gonna take San Francisco in this one, 3-0. Not a whole lot to say here. They had the loss to Philly. They bounced back and beat Toronto very easily last time out. I think Washington is a very similar story. Not too much to write home about here. This one will just be interesting to see if Justice can push them on any maps. But I don't see it happening. I got it as a 3-zip. Next, two pretty similarly skilled teams right now. Dallas Fuel, Toronto Defiant. Actually, going to go with Dallas here. I like their tank line a bit more. Gamsu and Note have just been more consistent than Numlock/Beast and Nevix for me. Toronto swapping around their backline, I feel like has also hurt them quite a bit. Dallas has locked in that backline for 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It's been a while. Ever since they acquired Paintbrush from the Gladiators, he has been a mainstay. And of course, Crimzo has been there the whole season, starting on the flex support. So, like I said, in terms of, Toronto's not really running Karev too much, and he is pretty much their biggest carry. So I think that definitely hurts them. I still like their DPS players quite a lot, but no Genji. Agilities isn't going to be quite as effective. We'll see if they use like Zik and Logics like they have been a little bit, or if we get a agility/Sureforce sighting at all. But either way, like I said, Dallas has been looking decent, and Toronto just has too many flaws, too many things that they've been trying to change and adapt to and just work in for me. So got the Fuel 3-1. Then back in action are the Gladiators. Once again, the Gladiators have a really nice schedule this week in terms of really hard games, but teams that they can beat. Teams that they are grouped in terms of the hierarchy, because you got your top three. Your Philly, San Fran, and Paris in the NA region. And then after that, it's you got Florida, you got both of the LA teams, you got Atlanta, all kind of jockeying for to see who's the 4, who's the 5. So we're gonna get a great look of Atlanta, of the LA teams. All right, how good are they really? Are they that 4th best in NA, or are they more 6 or 7? So I got Gladiators in this one. I think that they take down Atlanta 3-1. Again, Atlanta, they've been working in a couple of players. You got Saucy, hasn't had quite the debut I thought he would on the DPS, and then Ilris on the support as well. It just seemed a little bit disjointed. They got a couple of matches still, but there's genuine reason to be concerned if you're Atlanta. If you remember last season, they were on such a hot streak going into the playoffs that you just feel good about it. But when you go into the playoffs and you've lost 3 of 4, something like that, some of that energy is gone for sure. Some of that confidence is gone. So, a lot of roster swaps. I think for Atlanta, you gotta lock it in here for these 2 matchups. You're playing 2 good teams, one good team and one great team. You gotta say, okay, this is what we're doing. We're sticking with it. So your team can have a little bit of more cohesion going into the playoffs. But like I said, Gladiators have been playing really well together recently, so I think that they are able to take down Atlanta here in a 3-1 scoreline. Should be a great game. Then you got LA Valiant taking on the Vancouver Titans. So Vancouver, if they beat Boston, they'll be on a nice little two-match win streak, but I believe that ends here. LA, Valiant, I'm still not completely sold. I don't know exactly why still. I don't think it's my bias. I've been trying to really look at them, um, through a neutral lens and just say, okay, this is what they have. KSF, his Sombra wasn't really it for me. That was probably the biggest weakness that I saw from them last week out. KSP is obviously an absolute monster. I mean, he had such good highlights last round or last match against Florida, absolutely carrying them in multiple spots, multiple maps. But I think that this has got to be one of the most improved tank lines. I think Dreamer is one of the best main tanks in the league that just does not get talked about at all. His Winston has looked really good as well as the ball. And his Orisa gets the job done. So I think he's been a bit underrated. McGravy has had some really nice highlight reels on the Sigma. We see him just be a big energy guy. You got other guys like KSP who are super flatline. They like to keep calm. They don't want to get too high, too low during a match. And then you have McGravy, who's kind of an energy guy. Who feeds energy to his entire team. With his comms, with his just like I said, the energy, you feel that kind of energy even when you're not sitting right next to somebody. So Lastro has also been somebody who has not been talked about too much, but his Ana, especially last week, was nuts. He performed so well. He's been solid on pretty much every support that they put him on this season. So definitely an underrated player in Lastro as well as Dreamer. So Valiant are going to roll over Vancouver here. I got it as a 3-0, and setting up a great battle for LA to finish the regular season. I'm super stoked that that's the finale. Then you got Seoul Dynasty taking on the London Spitfire. Again, these teams matched up twice last week. Apologies. And Seoul rolled them both times. I think Seoul goes to the triple here. I think they get all 3 wins in a couple of weeks against the Spitfire. Like I said, they're just a better team. They're playing better. I really like Seoul right now. I think that they're an interesting team going into playoffs. And that APAC region, I really think that the number 2 team is just going to be sorted out in terms of who plays who in the playoffs. Because you got to think Shanghai is going to be in there. I don't see Shanghai getting knocked out. There's no way. But I could see Seoul, I could see Hangzhou, I could see Guangzhou or New York. I could legitimately see any of them moving on. London, no. Chengdu, no, unfortunately. But it's a wide open region, so I think that Seoul is going to get the win here, and they're going to get into playoffs on a nice winning streak. Next, you got Dallas Fuel taking on Paris. Gonna take Paris here. Without buffed Genji, they have lost some of their power, as you can see. Their power level is not quite as high, but they're still definitely better than Dallas. I still think that they are the 3rd best team in the region. This one is a clean sweep in my eyes. Paris has maybe the best coaching staff in the league this season. I've been really impressed with their coaches. They've known exactly when to sub their DPS players in for certain maps. They have a really good read on which heroes are good on every map. The team has been really happy. Whenever you see them, they seem to have a ton of cohesion despite being a mixed roster. So I would just like to give a shout out to all of Paris' coaching staff. I feel like they have done a tremendous job this season. You even have 2 styles of main tank, which is always good to have. Talked about that 4 DPS rotation. Fielder and FD God have been a great pair on the support. So Hanbin has had some inconsistent matches, but he's also had some incredibly good matches. So I love Paris. It's a great team. I think that they take down Dallas here without much issue at all. You got San Fran going up against Atlanta. I'm taking the shock here 3-0. Talked about Atlanta's inability to match up against the better teams in the league. San Francisco is obviously one of those. And I really think that San Francisco is souped up Atlanta. They're just better Atlanta. We talked about both very large rosters, particularly at the start of the year. Things have obviously changed for both teams a bit. Shock losing 2 of their DPS players, but they still have that nice rotation. Then Atlanta losing a couple of their players and adding a few new ones. So both super good, talented, deep teams, solid coaching staff. Shock is just better. Coaching staff better. Depth a bit better. Starters a bit better. So Atlanta just hasn't been able to quite produce the results this year. 10-9, which isn't bad by any means, but just not what a lot of people thought that they would produce. I had them as I think the 6th team overall, and they were number 6 on my list, and they're about 6-7 in their region. Probably 10 or 11 or 12-ish overall. So definitely been a bit of a disappointment. Shock come out to play every week. I think that they come out and they get a nice victory here. Continue to get that taste of fusion out of their mouth. I really think Philly might have just absolutely screwed the entire league. Because we see what happens when San Francisco loses. You freaking rile them up. It's just like when they C9'd against Atlanta in the playoffs last year. And it wasn't good for the rest of the league after, so we'll see. But that will bring us to the final match of the regular season. LA Valiant, LA Gladiators, battle for LA, as all things should be. Alright, I am going to be the homer here. I'm going with my Gladiators. I think Valiant have performed a little bit better consistently over the season. Gladiators sitting at 9-9, Valiant sitting at 11-9, so similar records. I just like how Gladiators are playing right now. Maybe they're getting my hopes up. I was talking to my friend about this like a couple days ago. Maybe they're just getting my hopes up with some nice play. They did beat a couple of weaker teams, but I believe. There has to be light at the end of the tunnel if you're a Gladiator fan. They gotta put together a couple of wins against these good teams. It should be super close, super competitive. Both of these teams have absolute carries at certain positions. The good thing for Gladiators, though, no Shax on Tracer. They can support that back line more. Like I said, KSF didn't impress me too much on the Sombra. I do think KSP is superior on the hit scan as opposed to Bird Ring. So I think that the Gladiators should really, they could go for a no Ash comp. They ran some like Genji Tracer, or not Genji Tracer. Those are the band heroes. They ran some Sombra last week, and it looked really, really solid. So we'll see Kevster, Mirror, whoever they use. I think they use a little bit more of a dive type style, or they could go double shields and just really shy away from that KSP Ash matchup and just run over the front line, because they have done that in the past couple of weeks and it has been quite successful. So I think we get a great matchup between two very stylistically different teams. But in the end, like I said, I'm going to stick with my guns. I'm going to stick with my boys. So much talent. I think that they might finally get it rolling. If they can get 2 victories, like if they could beat Atlanta and Valiant, or if they can beat Valiant Florida or Atlanta Florida, I think they're going to be feeling really good getting into these playoffs. So either way, it should be an amazing matchup. Thank you guys so much for the regular season. It's been a blast. Tons of changes, but I've still enjoyed the season quite a lot. I know the viewership has varied quite a bit, but I'm definitely still enjoying OWL. I hope you guys are too. Leave a comment down below. What are your predictions for this week? Any big upsets? Who do you think is going in an upward trajectory for playoffs? Who do you think is dipping down? Other than that, as always, thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I will see you in the next one for some playoff videos.